Gentlemen, I'm going to start with the learning sponsors, and then Michael is going to give the shiur for this morning. Okay? While those who need to get their Seidah Derech can do so. Okay, year of learning, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Cohen. Those who were inspired by Rebbetzin Emerita Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Marka Bat Mashum Yisachar, Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Spritzer Bat Yosef Chaim Bachava, Hanan Bat Moshe Eliezer Bachava, Hesher Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Isra Ben Yoel Moshe Bachava. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim. Marsha Brana, in memory of her husband, Harav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel. Friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen. Friends and family of Siggy Bester, Shalom Shraga Ben Dov. Friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer Ben Yisrael Aharon. Sarah Alpert, in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa Ben Hillel. A Month of Learning by Josh and Carol Sanborn, in memory of his father, Shmuel Aryeh Ben Baruch, and his mother, Hannah Bas Aryeh Leib. Sharon and Jerry Glassman, in memory of her father, Yezer Ben Itzim. David and Hannah Grunblatt, in memory of his mother, Esther Yocheved Bat Moshe. Ira Grobird, in memory of his mother, Rosa Bat Yitzchak. Mayor and Sarah Brevin, Michael and Golda Brevin, in memory of Mayor and Michael's father, Asher Zelig Ben Mother Bela Bat Elimelech. Paris, in memory of his father, Chaim Ben Aaron Cohen, and his mother, Huda Spot Tzvi. A Week of Learning by Gail and Phil White, for the 10th Yortzeit of his mother, Freda Bat Moshe Yaakov Cohen. Phyllis and Jeff Solomon, in memory of her father, Menachem Mendel Ben Meir. And a Day of Learning by Margareta Nullinger, in memory of her father, Avram David Ben Menachem Mendel. And the Shamas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velpi Yishir Shamat Leah, and Chobin Israel, good to Ben Shmuel.
Okay, we're on Lamed Amid Aleph at the first line, last couple of words. Okay, so we've been discussing in the Mishnah, when you find something, you have an obligation to preserve it, right? You have to feed an animal. You have to unroll a scroll, we learn. So now if you find a garment, you use the word garment, but remember their garments were usually large square pieces of material. So supposing you have, say, a silk garment, it needs, if you fold it up, it's going to get creases, it'll be ruined. Or even linen gets creases if you fold it. So you have to periodically spread it out. Problem is, I'll tell a mashal, on Rosh Hashanah, if it was 90 degrees, my mother, Allah Shalom, and all the other ladies would wear their mink coats. Sometimes garments are a status symbol. So we're talking over here about a garment that would be a status symbol. So if you have this exquisite silk square, you could drape it over a couch. It would be airing it, and it would be preventing it from getting creases. But on the other hand, if people came over, they'd say, wow, what a gorgeous thing. And you would be showing it off as if it were your own. Okay, so that's the background of what's going on here. You can spread it out for its needs, to air it, to keep it from getting wrinkled, but not to demonstrate honor for yourself. What? That's what the Gemara is going to spend the next 10 minutes talking about. Okay? So they asked the question, what if you do spread it out you spread it out for your needs, because you're spreading it out for its needs. Okay, what's the halacha? So if you think about it, it's really, a slippery slope. Because if you're allowed to spread it out for its needs, but it only needs to be out there for a couple of hours. And you have company coming tonight for dinner. So you'd leave it all day. You'd want the company there. You want to show it off, right? So it's a slippery slope, and the Gemara talks about that. Toishma, shoitcha litzarcha. You can spread it out for its needs. Litzarcha and, but for its needs, yeah. But but for both your need and its need, the Gemara says that you shouldn't do. So aim a safer, but let's look at the rest of the Mishnah, the ending of the Mishnah. Avalo lichvodo, but you should not get honor from spreading it out. Lichvodohu delo, only if it's for your honor, not. Ho litzarchoi, shapir. When the second clause says not for your honor, the inference is that as long as it's not totally your honor, it's okay. So again, here's your dilemma, Chaya. Okay, so shopper dummy, that should be fine. Ella meha leka shamamina. So basically, since the two clauses of the Mishnah have opposite inferences, we're left with no conclusion. Okay, so Taishma, now we're going to go through a series of arguments to try and clarify whether this blended need is acceptable or not. And some of them are interesting. And show the brilliant imaginations or to be able to draw connections of Chazal. Okay, Tashma, let's look into this. Lo yishtachena lo al gavi mita. You cannot spread a garment out as a bedspread over a bed. Below al gavi mogo, and you can't hang it on hooks on the wall like a tapestry, say. Litzorcho, if you do it for your needs to show off. Avo, yishtachena al gavi mita or al gavi mogo litzorcho, but you can spread it out over a bed or a couch or hang it on a wall on pegs. If it's for its needs, it needs to be aired out, say. Nizdamnu lo orchim. But what happens again if company's coming for dinner, right? Lo yishtam chena, lo al gavi mita, lo al gavi mogud. You cannot spread it out at all in a public part of the house. Bein litzorcho, bein litzorcha. Whether you're doing it because you want to show off, or whether you're rationalizing that you're doing it solely for its need, because you can't because of human nature, I guess. Shani Hasam. So the Gemara says, well, maybe showing it off in that case is different, because the miklo kale law, because leaving it out too long, literally the words mean you're burning it. So you can argue this a few ways. Sunlight will come in and will blanch a colorful garment. Okay, but the Gemara says, either because the guests will be jealous of your having this gorgeous thing and give you an ein hara. Okay, oh mishum ganave, or because somebody will see it and say, wow, this is a rich guy. Look at this fabulous stuff he has in his house. And you'll attract robbers. But I believe the word burn could also include that sometimes displaying something can actually be deleterious to it. Okay, so weiter. So that seems to be a proof you cannot, right? So, but on the other hand, the rationale here is that it might get stolen. So it's not a pure proof that litzorcho is usher completely. Okay, so try again. Tashma, another case. Hanichnis l'rivka. Okay. Here is the case. Okay. The dasha. You have a brand new baby calf, and that baby calf needs to nurse. On the other hand, the cow's main reason for existing, as far as you're concerned, is that it's going to walk on the grain and thresh it. So you rig up some kind of a contraption to bind actually the baby to the mother, so the mother can thresh and the baby still has access to her milk. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, okay. So that's the story. Now, while the baby is nursing, it happens to trample the wheat. Okay, so that's called an avoda. That's called working, a malacha. And had that calf be needed to for egla arufa, it would not be valid, because the fact that you put the yoke on it, even though your intent is not to thresh, the fact that the animal did thresh and you did something, you hooked it to the mother, so it would be puzzle. Okay, I'm sorry. So if you hook it up to the mother, the darsha, and it happens to thresh shera, it's still valid to be an egla rufa. So we see possibly as long as it's for its need, and you happen to have a little threshing happen, it's still okay. So that may reflect on our spreading out the garment. Okay, bishvil shetina v'tadush. So, and if on the other hand, you do the exact same thing, you hook it up with the same contraption, but you are aware that in so doing, that baby will do some threshing. And you have no problem with the threshing, because now there are two animals trampling your material to get the seeds out, and it's going to get done faster. So that's a good thing for you. So in such a case, if your machshava is to improve the threshing process, psula, then the animal could not be used for an egla rufa. So that seems to imply spreading the coat out for your own need, as well as the coat's need, because the baby's need as well as your need with the threshing. So then it wouldn't work. And here in the second clause, you have that it's for both needs, its and yours, and it's no good. V'katani psula, it says it's no good. So shani hasa, maybe that's a little bit different to ka'amar kra, because the pasuk says asher lo uvad bo, that no work was done with the animal. Now notice there's no vav in there. Mikol mokum, that means any kind of work whatsoever. Okay, so but that's problematic, because we said in the first clause, if you had absolutely no interest in threshing with this baby, all you did was hook it to the mother, and the mother is threshing, and the baby agavurka happens to step on some grain, that it was okay. Ihachi afilu reisha nami. So why did it say it's kosher in the reisha if the word means any work whatsoever, whether you wanted it or not? So halo domya elalaha d'tanan. So that's very similar to what we learned in another case. Now this time we're going to talk about a red heifer. Okay, if you have a para aduma, a red heifer, and it does any work whatsoever, then it cannot be used as a red heifer. On the okay, but there could be, meaning if you put any kind of a burden on it at all, if you put a piece of paper on it and it moves daladamas or whatever the ruling is, then you wouldn't be able to use it as a red heifer. Nevertheless, what about shekana leha'oif. A bird positions itself on the back of this cow. Okay, and the cow moves and it's carrying the bird. The word bird weighs more than a piece of paper does. So, okay, nevertheless, shera. It doesn't matter. The bird is not considered a burden, and the cow is still usable as a red heifer. On the other hand, Allah Hazachar, if without your involvement, a bull comes and mounts that cow, so during the course of their mating, the bull puts some weight on the back of the cow, then she's no longer usable, psula, she's no good anymore. So my timer, what is the rationale for saying the cow is not usable as a para aduma if it's been mated by a bull? The Rav Papa, like Rav Papa said, the Omer Rav Papa, ikos of uvad, if the word were written with a vav, okay, Korean uvad, and then we read it as an oo sound, that it's with a vav, hava amina afila mamela, then I would say that anything on the back of the animal, even if it came on its own, like the bird, would be no good. Okay, and it would make the animal unfit for a paraduma. The ikos of avad, and if it's written without the vav, and it's read b'korin avad, he did the work. Hava amina ad avad ba ihu. It would be interpreted to mean unless the man puts something on the back of the bull. So in that case, both the bird and the bull, on the cow, I'm sorry. So both the bird and the bull would be okay. He didn't do it. Okay, but the problem is hashta, diksiv avad. It's written without the vav. V'korin uvad, but but we pronounce it as if it had the vav. Actually, it has the sideways three dots. So therefore, we have to interpret it like this: Ke'inan uvad dam avad. That the passive has to, in some ways, be similar to the active. Ma'avad nichale. Why would a man put a burden on a cow? Because he wants to move the thing from here to there. In other words, if he wouldn't do it unless he somehow benefited. Okay, so af uvad nichale. So even if it's passive and he's uninvolved, if he has the possibility of some kind of a benefit, then the cow would be puzzled to be paraduma. So if the cow is mated, it could at least in theory get pregnant. Having two cows is better than one cow, so that's a benefit for the owner. So therefore, the halacha worked out fine that with the bird making a nest on the back of the cow is certainly no benefit to him. It's no skin off his back. And therefore the cow is fine. But a bull mounting the cow, there is at least the implicit benefit of a possible pregnant cow, and therefore it's no good. So that is an independent case, and it doesn't do us any good because spreading out the sheet, he's doing it. There's no there's nothing passive about it. So that case doesn't inform us, right? So we go weiter. I'm sorry. So that is, since he actively spread it out, this is a proof text, as Kenny would say, because if it's passive, it's okay if he doesn't benefit. But if he's active, then it doesn't matter if he puts something on the animal, right? So that is the case. Now, play kesef et play nechayshes, mishtamesh behen. If you're holding a lost object, you have to act to preserve and protect it. So since silver tarnishes and since copper gets a patina, you have to make use of it at least to keep it from tarnishing, okay, or to maintain the patina on the copper. Tana Rabban, Hamaitzi clay eights. If you find a wooden object, Mishtamish Behen Bishvil Sholo, Yirkavu, you should utilize a wood object so it shouldn't dry out and crack or be, whatever. So if it's a basket made out of wood, you would want to utilize it to get, because if you leave something wood on for a long time, it deteriorates. Okay? Nechoshes, copper products. Mishtamesh behen bechamin, you should use them for warm food. Avalo al yedei ha'oir, but you should not cook in them. Literally put them on the fire, because the intense heat will either melt it or distort it, and you're damaging it. What? Because it'll destroy it. It'll damage it. Clay kesef, if it's a silver. This is a long brisa. If it's a silver object, mishtamish behem betzoinen. You put cold liquids or cold foods on it, avalo b'chamin, but not warm foods. And you'll know that warmth increases the likelihood of tarnishing. So heating it up is not good. Mipnei shemach chiron, because literally it blackens it, it tarnishes it. Okay? Margalafos v'kardumos. What about if you find tools? This is shovels and axes, hatchets. Okay? Mishtamish behem v'rach. You use it on soft, you're allowed to use it on soft material. You could cut up kindling, for example, avaloba kosha, but you could not use it to split logs, literally on hard things. Mipnei shemaf son, because you will damage it. You'll get the chips in the blade if it's chopping wood. Clay zahav, clay zachuchis, gold and glass. Lo yiga behem, you leave them alone. You don't touch them at all. Ad sheyovo Eliyahu, until Eliyahu comes and tells you who it belongs to. So or because even though you announced it, and even though it may have a simon, you don't know, you haven't found the owner. Okay, so there, because gold does not tarnish, and glass is unaffected by sitting on a shelf for a couple of years. So there you can't use it. So again, it works out that you do whatever is best for the object. Kederech sha'amru ba'aveda, and just as, now this is an interesting thing. We discussed earlier, machlokes between Rav Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, whether you are a shoel or a shomer chinam, and Rabbi Yosef says a shomer sachar, but your relationship with the Aveda was characterized by referencing the different kinds of shomrim. So the Gemara is going to now ask, can you go backwards? Can you go from Aveda to a Pikadon? We were clearly a shomer of one sort or the other. Kederech sha'amru ba'aveda kach amru b'pikadon. Just the same way, you have to act to benefit the object. If it's an aveda, it's an animal, you feed it. If it's a silver thing, you keep it shiny and avoid tarnish, etc. Kach amru b'pikadon. Similarly, your responsibility is exactly the same if you're watching something for somebody. So Gemara says, Pikadon, my avida tegave. What are you doing fooling around with the Pikadon? Omer, why should you have to polish? Kenny gives me his silver menorah to watch when he goes, why should I have to polish it? Let him come and polish it himself. It's his. So the Gemara says, Omer Rav Ada bar Chama, Omer Rav Sheshes, Bibikadon Shahalchol Ba'el Aleihen B'minas Hayam. Kenny went to Israel, and I'm holding his silver menorah. So I should polish it because he can't come and do it himself. So at this point, it goes both ways. Matzah sak okupa. Supposing you're walking along and you see a burlap bag in a mud puddle. Okay, now you are a chashuv elderly yid. You got your shtreimel and your bekisha on, and it's a past to pick up this gooey, muddy burlap bag. It's beneath your dignity, right? Or anything else that you would be reluctant to pick up. A kid's basketball. You got your Streimel and Bekisha on. Okay. Hareza lo yito. There is literally you do not have to pick it up, meaning that there is no mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda if the thing is beneath your dignity to pick it up. Okay. So Menahanimili. How do we know that? Is there a pasuk? The Tana Rabbanan, we have a brisa. Is alam to you? There is the pasuk says you may hide from it. Okay, so what does that pasuk mean? Pa'amim sha'ata misalem. There are circumstances where you can quote hide, meaning not get involved in hashavas aveda. V'pa'amim shi'ata misalem, and there are times when you're not allowed to hide, meaning you must get involved in hashavas aveda. Haketzad, what are we talking about? Haya kohen v'hu bebeis hakavaros. The man is a kohen, and he sees a lady's diamond ring on a tombstone in the cemetery. He's on the road near the cemetery. So in that case, the Kohen obviously can't go in and get the diamond ring. He's not allowed. There he has to hide. Oh, Shahaya Zake, or the guy is either elderly or a scholar or both. The Eina Lifti Kvaida, and picking up the dirty burlap bag or a kid's basketball is beneath his covet. So then he can hide. Oh, shahoisa malacha shalom meruba b'shel chavera. You are doing valuable work. You're a tax preparer, and you're sitting in your office, and you glance at doing people's taxes. You're getting $500 an hour, and you glance at your window, and there's a $5 object on the sidewalk. So if you put down what you're doing, go out, pick it up, and bring it in, you're going to spend, quote unquote, by losing time and money more than the thing is worth. So then you don't have a din of Hashavas Aved. Okay? L'chein nema, therefore the pasuk says, his al mata mahen, you may hide from it. So now the Gemara wants to know, we just gave 3 cases. Typically, when a pasuk gives a case, it's an archetype, and you learn the other cases from that case. So, but the Brisa gave us 3 cases. Which one is the archetype case? That's what the Gemara wants to know. Lamai itzrich kra. For which of these cases do we need the pasuk? If you're talking about the Kohen and the object in the cemetery, pshita, that's obvious. You don't need a pasuk. Hi aseh v'hai lo saseh v'yaseh. The mitzvah of returning a lost object is an aseh. The mitzvah of a Kohen not being a tameh, one, he has to remain tahar, that's an aseh. And he may not become tameh, that's a lo saseh. So, lo aseh aseh v'daicha es lo saseh v'yaseh. So one aseh can't push away a double mitzvah of an aseh and a lo saseh. So it's obvious. You don't need the pasuk for that. Okay, Visu, and furthermore, lo dechinan asura mikame mamoina. If there's an Isser and a Heter case, money doesn't matter. If the Kohen can't be Matame, that could be a diamond ring. It doesn't have to be a kid's ball, no matter how valuable the thing is. As a matter of fact, the halacha is for an asset, you have to spend up to a third of your assets. But for a low asset, yeah, you could spend everything. There is no limit to how much you have to spend if such expenditure precludes you from violating a losa. Yeah, that's why he can't go in. That's what we just said. That either it's obvious he doesn't, or because the finding the lost object, that's what we just read, is an asset. But avoiding Tuma is an assay. He has to stay tahar. And a los assay, he may not become Tomei. So therefore, he is not allowed to go in and take the diamond ring. That's a different story. But he doesn't have the mitzvah of finding it. You would. Okay? So therefore, can't be the archetypal case. Ella Shelo Meruba B'Shel Chaveira. Maybe the case is that the tax preparer case. If you're going to remember, you're allowed to bill the finder, the loser, for your efforts in finding his object. So if you're going to bill him $500 because it took you an hour to pot with his book, and the book is worth $10, he would have said, leave it there. So you're allowed to hide from it. So maybe that's the archetypal case. Midarav Yehuda Omarav Nafka, but if you look at this case, from what Reb Yehuda quoting Rav said, Nafka, we can derive the Omer that's not the case. The Omer Reb Yehuda Omer Rav Efes Ki Lo Yehebecha Evyon, that Jews should not become poor. If you're poor, you're poor. But if you can avoid becoming poor, you're not supposed to become poor. So protecting your own income or your own assets trumps helping someone else protect his or save his. So if the trade-off is you're going to lose a lot and he's not going to be willing to compensate you, then you're not obligated to find his thing. That's a davar pashut also. So that can't be the archetype. Ella lezaken v'yena lefi k'vaydo. But it's the old man or the Talmud Chacham, and it's beneath his covet to be metapel with that object. So now we're going to, why can't you just say that's obvious too? Because that's a sliding scale. That's a gray area, as the Gemara will point out, okay? Somebody say something? No, it's not. Yes, in a way, it's a judgment call. But even when it's a judgment call, it's still not obvious. And the Gemara is going to tell us how. Omer Rava, Hakisha, if you do this elderly man who is not about to start the dragging of a donkey through the streets, right? Donkeys can sometimes be difficult to deal with. So he has a right to leave it. But what if he gives it a pat on the butt? Maybe if I give this standing donkey a patch, maybe it'll go home. Well, no, because here you mean you kick it. Okay, but the Gemara is going to give the case of animals. Okay, so if you give the animal a patch, even though it's beneath your dignity to be involved with that animal, that tiny little bit of involvement means now you have the full obligation of Hashava Saveda, even if you wind up dragging this stupid donkey through the streets with your Streimel and Bekesha, okay, which is obviously a little weird. So the Hikisha Chayev Ba. As soon as you touch the animal, you're already involved in the mitzvah. Abaya have Yosef Kaime de Rava. Abaya was sitting in front of Rava. Kaza Lahana Ize the Kaimo, and he saw stationary goats nearby. Okay, Shako Kala Vashadabahu. So he picked up a little piece of dirt and tossed it in the direction of the goats. Maybe he would startle them into moving and going home. Omerle, Rava said to him, Ahavas Bahu, now you're obligated to deal with them. Kum Ahadarinahu, get up and go get involved and take them back where they belong. Because just this tiny act of involvement was enough. So again, it's beneath his dignity. He's a Gadol Hador to be involved with goats, but any involvement is enough. Now we're going to get a new case, like a very strange gray area. Okay, they asked like this: if this dignified fellow, if he saw a goat in an open field where nobody is around, so it has nothing to do with his dignity. So he might get involved and bring it home, at least with Nemeshur as a din, but maybe even actually the din, because his covet is not involved if nobody's watching. He's not getting dirty. He's just leading a goat. So it's not the same as the muddy sack, right? So he would do it like that. But if it was in town, he would never get involved with the goat. Now remember, we said the slightest involvement means now you're committed. So now the Gemara is going to ask, okay, so what would be the halacha if you have to go through town to get it home? Okay, amrinin ashava ma'alya be'inan. If we say once he got involved at all, he has to do the whole thing and get it home. The kaven de lav and since when it's in the city, he wouldn't do it at all. Lo l'chayev, even out in the field, he's afraid to be coming involved and then have to lead it through the city, so he wouldn't do it at all. Dilma, or we say the facts as they are right now are what counts. Besada mehas ha is chayev lay, since nobody's watching out in the field, he has a clear obligation. The kavan is chayev lay besada, and once he got involved in the field, a chayev lay be'ir, his obligation is a continuous one, and he has to be he has to neglect his covet when he gets to town and keep dragging the goat into the city. So the Gemara says, Teku. It's too complicated. We can't figure that out. Now, the Rishonim do talk about it, and you do have to bring it home. But in terms of the logic of the argument, it's a take. Okay. Yeah, but that's where he actively got involved. Now you're out taking a walk, and you see somebody's dog dragging a leash, and there's nobody around. Now, I'm a religious Jew, and I wouldn't dream of owning a dog. It would be both an embarrassment and possibly a halachic prohibition to have a dog. So I wouldn't want to take the dog home. But if I'm out in the field, I have to make a decision. Nobody's watching. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, Verbo bought a dog." So and that's the case we're talking about. That the circumstance is such that doing it now is not beneath his covet, but it will lead beneath his cover, do you have to do it or not? And that's the takeover. Because right now he's obligated, but it inevitably will lead. It's like a psik ratio. All right? All right. Now, next case. Omer Rava, kol shebishalom achazi. If this is trying to put, because we talked about gray areas. So now we're talking about the value of something. If you were to leave, I don't know, something very inexpensive in shul, and you got home and you say, wow, I left this postcard in shul, you might not bother to go back to shul to get it. So in that kind of a case, you would not be obligated to take Kenny's postcard to his. If you would leave your own, you don't have to bother with his. But if it's important enough that you would get your own, then you have to deal with his. That's what we're going to be talking about. Omer Rabba, kol b'shalom achazir. If it was your own thing, you'd go back and take it home. Go get it. B'shul chaveru nami machazir. Then you would be obligated to return your fellow's thing at this on the same level. And any time you would unpack or load your own stuff, like you would obviously take your luggage out of your trunk and bring it into your apartment, then b'shel chaveru nami porek v'toen, you are obligated if your friend is struggling with unloading his trunk when he comes back after Pesach and you see him unloading, you have an obligation to help. That's a dioraisa obligation. You can't walk by a guy who's struggling. Okay, so now we're going to tell a story. And it's a really cool story. What? No, it's at least it tickles my fancy. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yaisi Haver Akazil Ba'urcha. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yaisi. Now he's an older man. And he's a Talmud Chacham. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yaisi Haver Azil Ba'urcha. He was walking along. Pogach Be'ahu Gavra. He encountered a fellow. Have Dore Pascha Oife. And this fellow was carrying a bundle of wood on his shoulder, but he went, before Yishmael got there, he put it down on the side of the road, and he was sitting resting. So the guy had placed it down, and he was resting. Amalei, the guy looks up and sees Rabbi Yishmael coming by, and he says, Daleli, put the lump, this bundle of wood, back on my shoulder. In other words, I'll get up, but it's hard for me to bend down and lift it up. It's very heavy. You pick it up and put it on my shoulder for me. So Amalei, now Rabbi Yishmael was possibly not lechuya, because he's a Talmud Chacham and he's elderly, and lifting up a bundle of logs is not exactly, kavodic activity. On the other hand, he doesn't want to leave this guy struggling. So he says, Kama shavin, how much is that bundle of wood worth? Amalei pal gezuza, it's worth half a buck, right? It's worth half of a zuz. So Yehevle Palgezuze Va'afkara. So Rabbi Yishmael took out his wallet, gave the guy a half a buck, and said, okay, I'm buying this bunch of wood from you, so to speak, and I'm mafkir it. So I don't have to take it home with me. We'll just leave it here. Go on about your way. So this guy is a shrewd guy. What? Well, he could buy wood when he gets home. The point that we don't know that he's using it to cook. He might be doing it as a panasa. and he got his half a zuz for the wood. He's whole. But this is a sharp guy. Hader Zachavahu. So the guy said, "Oh, that wood's now hefker. Zacha, I'm going to be mine. Now, Rabbi Yishmael, pick it up for me." Okay? Hader Yehevle Palga Zuze V'Afkara. So once again, Rabbi Yishmael paid him for it and said, "Leave it there." So once again, so the guy claimed it again and said to Rabbi Yishmael, "Pick it up for me." So now Rabbi Yishmael says like this, the third time, right? Amalei, he says to the guy, "Lakuli alma afkarenahu." As far as everybody else in the world is concerned, my relationship with this wood is terminated. It's hefker. But in relationship to you, lo afkarenahu, I'm not making it hefker. And then he went on about his business. So they heard about this story. And now, of course, they have to have a halachic discussion. Can you partially be mafker something, right? Because it happened like that, and the yeshiva has to understand what was going on in that ma'isa. So umi have hefker ki hagavna. Can you make something hefker with regard to everybody but one person? Beis Shammai Omrim, Hefker Laniyim. If you decide to be mafker, say a field, and you try to say, "I'm making it Hefker, but only so poor people can come and take food from it." Hefker. According to Rabbi Beis Shammai, it is Hefker. So you could do this partial Hefker. Beis Hillel Omrim Eina Hefker. It's not Hefker. Aji hefker lanim ashirim shmita. On Shemitah year, you must make your field hefker, but anybody, a billionaire or a pauper, have equal rights to take the produce. So according to Beis Hillel, you're not allowed to partially mafkir, and we paskin like Beis Hillel. So what happened over there? Ella Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi Lakula Alma Avkirinahu. But what he really did was make it hefker to the whole world, including the guy. Okay? Uba milsame alma hu da'afme. And he merely said that to the guy so that the cycle wouldn't keep repeating. The guy wasn't that knowledgeable. So he made a misstatement of fact. It was fake news, but it allowed Rabbi Yishmael to go home. Okay? Now I told you earlier, why did he even get involved at all? It was beneath his dignity. So the Gemara finally gets around to that. Ha Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi Zokain ve'ena lefi kvodo hava. He shouldn't have gotten involved at all. He was not required to get involved at all. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi lifnim mishuris hadin hu ava. He acted above and beyond the requirements of the law, and because that was the kind of person he was. The Tani Rabbi Yosef, because Rabbi Yosef taught us, Hodata lehem, when God, there's a long pasuk with a bunch of words that may seemingly are superfluous. V'hadata lahem, you should tell them, ze beis ha'chayehem. This means, these words mean you should earn a living. Okay? Es haderech, the proper way. Ze gemulas chasadim, this is, you have to do nice things for people. Okay, the Yelchu, you should walk. Zeh biker chayler. This means you have an obligation to visit the sick. But pasuk has the word ba. Zekruva, that means burying dead bodies. The as hama'aseh, the pasuk goes on, and the actions. Zehadin, that's the strict halacha. You have to follow halacha. Asher ya'asun, and this is how you should do. Zu lifnim mishuris hadin. So we have at least an asmachta, if not actually a drasha, that you are obligated, if depending on your status and the circumstances, to go above and beyond the law. And that's an obligation, and Rabbi Shmuel did exactly that. Okay, so now, of course, we're going to darshan the pasuk, and we're going to have problems with that drasha. Asher Amamar, the master said, Yelchu, you just said, Zebikr Chaylim, you should go the proper way. That means to visit the sick. Hainu Gemilas Chasadim. Problem is, you already said you should do nice things. So clearly, visiting the sick is a nice thing. Why is it separated out? Lo tzricha ela leben gilo. What we're talking about now, this is astrology. If you're a Sagittarius and the other guy's a Sagittarius, then visiting him has an effect of 1/60th. Problem is, 1/60th is buckle. So if I'm sick and you come visit me and you take away 1/60th of my illness, it's meaningless because it's buckle. So why bother to come? So if it was just Gemilas Chasadim, you would learn there's no reason for me to go. But since there's this extra pasuk, then you visit the person even if it doesn't really help it. And you have that obligation. Lo tzricha ela leben gilo, someone with your same astrology, the Omar Mar ben gilo noitel echad nishishim b'chalav. That relationship for both Sagittarians takes away only 1/60th. Va'afilu hachi, even though it's batal, midboy le demazil legabe, you still, even though the astrology doesn't work in that case, you still have to go visit. Now, what about ba? When we said that's for funerals. Akvura, that's the obligation to bury the ill, to attend funerals. Similarly, that also is an act of Gemilas Chasadim. Lo tzricha ela lezaken v'yenu lefi kvoda. This is again a case where it's Chol Hamoed, you're wearing your Streimel and Bekisha, Schwartz dies, you have to go to the cemetery, you have to dig in the dirt, you're going to mess up your begadim. It's still an obligation because of the word bo, to attend the funeral. Asher Yasun, that you have to do. Zu lifnim mishuras hadin. We said that's going above and beyond. The Omer of Nachman, Rav Yochanan, La Krova Yerushalayim Ela Shedanu Bodin Torah. The reason Jerusalem was destroyed is because people stuck to the letter of the law and didn't go above and beyond and didn't take into account the spirit of the law. So the Gemara says, Ella dine demigzinta dinahu. So should they have to have a dictator? In other words, if you're not going to follow the law, the consequences will either be dictator or anarchy. So they chose a dictator. Ella Ema, so say instead, Sha'amadnu dinehem al din Torah, they stuck to the strict letter of the law, v'lo abdu lifnim mishuras hadin, and even when it was apparent that the strict application of the law was unjust, they refused to go above and beyond. And we'll stop there. So from this Gemara, at least circumstantially, lifnei mishuras hadin may be an obligation. Depending on the circumstances in an individual's case, it may be that going lifnei mishuras hadin is an actual diraisa. Again, how whether these are asmachtas or